Paul Finebaum, SEC Network analyst, host of the Paul Finebaum Radio Network show, can be watched live, the internet stream on myfoxfinebaum.com. Most upset fan base today in the SEC is where, Paul?
Alabama. Are you surprised? Now, there are quite a few choices, Dan. Auburn fans, I think, saw the beatdown in Baton Rouge coming, but Alabama fans never see it coming. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, they would have been at Little Bighorn with Custer and still not seen the end in near. But yeah, and that's the situation with Alabama. I heard you mention a few minutes ago that Nick Saban always seems to blame someone else, and it's always about him. And I think it's interesting. He reminds me a little bit, Dan, of Tiger Woods a couple of years ago. I mean, before Tiger Woods became Happy Gilmore. And when he lost, it was always about him. It wasn't about Rory making 4 birdies down the stretch or Phil overtaking him. And with Nick Saban, it's about him. It's not about anyone else.
But I looked at the defense. Like, I always think there's going to be a running game, great offensive line, and the defense will be stout. I'm not seeing that this year.
Well, what happens is we buy into the February 4th hype. Saban has won something like 6 or 7, or maybe it's 16 or 20 straight national high school championships. And so fans, when you see a 5-star wide receiver come in, he is the next Amari Cooper. But for whatever reason, there are not that many of those, and I think that there's a great frustration. But the big issue at Alabama, of course, the defense is not as good. But they don't have a quarterback, and they played musical chairs with the quarterback situation Saturday. And I think Lane Kiffin flipped a coin before the game. Otherwise, I can't understand how he came up with the choice he made.
But Paul, I don't understand this. This is Alabama, and you don't have a quarterback?
Well, what happens now is you have to go out and draft one, Dan, if you don't have one. And I mean, Chad Kelly, the player for Ole Miss, who looked pretty good at times. He came from Clemson after he got shown the door. Don't forget Alabama's quarterback Jacob Coker. He was at Florida State. Mm-hmm. Jimbo Fisher actually said this. And I mean, Jimbo's supposedly a very honest person. He said Jacob Coker nearly beat out Jameis Winston for the starting job 3 years ago. And, of course, Golson to Florida State. So Saban obviously drafted the wrong quarterback in Jacob Coker because he doesn't really have one. He has one coming up, Blake Barnett, who's a raw freshman, but he's clearly not ready to play yet.
Leonard Fournette's ready to play in the NFL.
Yeah, he is. The game now is, who does he remind you the most of? And I was in Baton Rouge over the weekend, and is it Adrian Peterson? Is it Bo Jackson? Is it Herschel Walker? Is it all of the above? But I think someone said down there the only really sad thing is that he has to come back to LSU next year.
Yeah.
Because there's no doubt he'd have a spot on any roster.
Best SEC running back of all time is who?
Herschel Walker, and every time I say that, Bo Jackson about breaks me in half, which isn't difficult at 135 pounds. But I've never seen one. I mean, you've seen the video of the first game when he ran over Bill Bates. I mean, literally left track marks in his chest. So I'd go with him 1, Bo Jackson 2.
Ole Miss a title contender, national title?
I think so. I mean, I didn't buy scoring 70 against Fresno State and East Columbus High School in the first 2 games, but I do buy them now. And not to state the obvious, but the Bryant-Denny Stadium, well, used to not be a very easy place to win, but it's still they have an incredible resume. But the SEC, they do have LSU at home. I think that is fairly significant if you play the SEC Jeopardy game.
Talking to Paul Finebaum of the SEC Network, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Auburn getting humbled. Arkansas with Texas Tech. I mean, I thought Auburn and Arkansas would have legitimate chances to be a playoff team this year. Certainly the way it looked at the start of the year. What the heck happened to Arkansas here?
Well, I don't want to join the chorus of millions in front of me taking shots at Brett Bielema. I mean, what he said about Ohio State was true. He just picked the wrong week to say it. I mean, after all, he had Toledo coming to town. You don't want to overlook them. Dan, I mean, Arkansas was always a middle-of-the-pack team that you thought might break through, but Auburn is the story. I mean, Auburn was a legitimate national championship contender. All of my colleagues had Jeremy Johnson as a Heisman pick. How we come up with that, I have no idea. He's only started 1 game, but Gus Malzahn was his big promoter. Think about this for a second. Auburn Saturday lost its 4th straight SEC game. 3 of those by double digits. They're no longer a contender. I mean, right now Auburn is in search of getting to a bowl game. It's happened that quickly with what we've seen Saturday. And don't forget, I mean, they do have that win over Jacksonville State on the
resume. What should Ohio State do with the quarterbacking situation?
Well, I think what Urban should have done is stayed with J.T. Barrett. I don't know why he made that decision with Cardale Jones, and I know it looked great. And how many of our friends in the media said Cardale Jones is the best quarterback we've ever seen? What we saw of him Saturday against mighty Northern Illinois was, I think, predictable. J.T. Barrett was much more consistent. I think the team rallied around him. He is the captain of the team, or one of the captains. And I heard this joke the other day, but I think it's applicable that Ohio State was clearly looking ahead to Western Michigan.
Oh, the snark is ready to go today. You're in midseason form. The phone call should be great for you today, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, I don't get that many opportunities to react to Auburn and Alabama losing on the same day. I mean, this is one of those great days of my career.
If you had Saban on today, what would you ask him?
I would ask him if he hit his head on the way into the locker room before the game and why he came up with Cooper Bateman instead of Jacob Coker, who is serviceable but had a big win. I mean, you have Ole Miss coming to town, and Dan, the FPI, whatever ESPN calls it, actually predicted Ole Miss to beat Alabama. Saban must have missed that. He must have been studying the history books that Alabama had not lost to Ole Miss in Tuscaloosa since 1988, because I think his decision was terrible, and it's one of the many reasons why Alabama lost Saturday.
I know we love to overreact, and normally we overreact with the NFL, but I talked to Greg McElroy, the former Alabama quarterback who works with you guys, and I said, I can't see Nick Saban staying there, more than 3 years. And he said, no, Nick told me he's going to be here for the long haul, and I'll say it again, but we had the conversation 2 weeks ago. How long do you think Nick Saban stays there at Alabama?
Dan, I was with you until this summer. I spent a lot of time with him doing an OTL piece, and that was one of the big questions I asked him. And he looked at me and said, "This is the only thing I have to do." And he gave some line about his mother had scored a hole-in-one at the age of 81, and I didn't buy that, but I think he would be lost without coaching. And some people say, well, he's going to go to game day. I mean, can you listen to this, Dan? Can you imagine Nick Saban sitting in the truck and having Lee Fitting yell at him?
Wait. His next job would be to go be on game day?
Yeah, and that's what the speculation has been, that he it's been written about, and Richard Deitch mentioned it, other people have said that that's the next progression, to leave Alabama to go into television. I don't buy that at all. I think he'll either stay at Alabama or find something else. I mean, some of his friends say what he would really like to do, as opposed to being czar of college football, he mentioned that to me as well, would be to run an NFL team in terms of player personnel. I don't know if that's in his. He's not going to coach again. I just don't see that happening.
Man, to go to game day, I've been around these coaches, and you have to be all in that you are done coaching, and it just seems like Urban Meyer. We knew he was only there. That was like a rest stop. He wasn't going to stay long as being on game day.
I watched a game with him. I watched the Alabama LSU game in 2011, the 1-2 game with Urban Meyer on the sidelines. And when the game came, when it went into overtime, this man was the most miserable human being. Well, I mean, that's on a good day for Urban Meyer, but he was the most miserable human being in that stadium because he wasn't out there. He kept looking. He said, "Look at these two defenses." I mean, it killed him. But Saban is also, he'll be 64 years old on Halloween. You can insert your punchline anywhere you want there. But I just think he's beginning to look down the road. I do think, though, had Texas not been so arrogant, and what I mean by that is Patterson, the athletic director, really did not want to deal with Saban a couple of years ago, even though the boosters did. I think he could have been enticed to go there as his last hurrah, but now I think that will be in Alabama.
Yeah, I thought he was going to go there because he had given Alabama everything. They were fine if he said, "Look, I'm going to move on to my next challenge, and you bring back Texas football program." I thought that was going to be it. I thought he was going there.
I I mean, the $100 million number that was thrown around, I think, was somewhat legitimate. By the way, I just saw you put on the screen about my book, My Conference Can Beat Yours, Why the SEC Still Rules College Football. You can get that right now on eBay for 33 cents.
Is it still a true statement, Paul?
You have to qualify it, Dan, and I think the SEC may have three of the top teams in the country this week. That could change next week. But overall, I think the SEC is in for week-to-week beatdowns by the national media. I'm not crazy about what I've seen so far.
Great to talk to you, Paul. Have a great day.
Dan, always my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Paul Finebaum, the SEC Network.